What's going on, Crimson Tide fans? Chris Daughtry here with the Alabama Football Report by Chat Sports. Appreciate everybody who joins us pretty much daily here at the Alabama Football Report. We're talking spring practice number 3 today. Kane Wommack had his presser yesterday after Alabama's third practice of the spring here, and he really touched on a lot of things. He touched on the defensive line, he touched on the secondary, really, talked about some of those names that, might be some question marks for Alabama fans going into next season. So we're going to talk about all that coming up on today's show. No practice next week for the Crimson Tide. They're off on spring break. They will be back in action, though, on the 18th. Before we move on, make sure you guys go ahead and drop a like on today's video for me. We're going up against our Ohio State football report here, and we are really blowing them out of the water right now, and I want to keep it that way. So for every single Alabama football video you guys see right here, first thing you should do is like the video. It helps us out a lot. It pushes us out into the algorithm so more Alabama fans get an opportunity to, keep up with the Crimson Tide on a daily basis. So do not miss out. Make sure you guys hit that like button for me right now. Really does help us out a lot. All right, so some of the key interior defensive linemen that Kane Wommack talked about. That's the first thing I want to talk about on today's video. Talked about James Smith. We know him. He did a really good job for Alabama last season, really came on strong for him, really finished the season strong as well. Jeremiah Beaman is another guy that really stuck out on the interior of the defensive line. He didn't get a ton of playing time last year for Alabama, but really when he did, I really do think he contributed a lot on the field for them. And then a guy like Edric Hill, really, he hasn't played a ton for Alabama so far in his career here, but he is a guy that Kane Wommack singled out in his press conference yesterday, and that is a real positive thing. He was asked specifically about the depth of the interior of that defensive line, and he said, I don't know if I ever really feel like we have enough depth on the interior. So whether or not you feel like, Alabama needs more guys, they definitely feel the same there. He said that was one of their, biggest concerns or areas of concerns going into next season was the depth right now along the defensive line. That's why you see really they're going out and they're really trying to recruit that area hard as well. But he did say something that really stood out to me. He said, we will address those needs before the season begins. So really to me, that means they're going to go out in that spring transfer portal window and they're going to try to add at least one other interior defensive lineman. I think that's definitely something Alabama fans definitely going to be on board with, because I see you guys down in the comment section definitely worried about the depth along the interior of that defensive line. Really like some of the starters that you have there, but in terms of the depth, we just really don't know what Alabama has and if those guys are able to contribute, at a, very high level here. Because you did lose some guys in the transfer portal along the defensive line there. Jaheim Otis is really one that really, hurt me a lot, honestly, because I like Jaheim Otis in his first season at Alabama. Really thought, he did struggle at times, but you saw a lot of those flashes, right? And then this year, coming in, the new Kane Wommack system, I think, some of the injuries maybe hindered him a little bit. I think he had a shoulder injury that had bugged him a lot, but I do feel like maybe his size as well is something that just wasn't able to it maybe hindered him a little bit with this Kane Wommack defense. Really, they asked those defensive linemen to do so many different types of things. Really does suck, because I thought there was a lot of, positivity in Jaheim O's future, but, he left the team after just a couple of games this season. Went ahead and entered the transfer portal and made his way to Colorado. Hunter Osborne, I really loved Hunter Osborne in terms of what he could turn out to be, but I feel like he just found his way, too far down on the depth chart. Didn't feel like he was going to be able to climb up that depth chart in the couple of years he has in college football. Wanted to go somewhere else, found his way to Virginia. And then Damon Payne Jr., man. This is a guy that really, did play a lot for Alabama last year, played in 12 games, but was able to contribute some for Alabama last year. Also added 3 pressures, 10 stops as well, and only 288 snaps last year for the Crimson Tide. I thought going into this year, he was going to be that real mean guy on the interior of the defensive line, along with other guys like James Smith, Tim Keenan as well. You don't have him this year. It's very unfortunate. He found his way to Michigan. They've been pumping out a lot of guys along the defensive line into the NFL here lately. So, I don't necessarily blame him for wanting to go to Michigan, but losing Damon Payne Jr. along the interior of the defensive line really, I do think, hurts you a little bit this season. So let me know here in the comments section of today's video, will Alabama get an interior defensive lineman in the spring transfer portal window? Let me know what you guys think at the pinned comment of today's video. That ad's going to come here on YouTube. That is totally fine. You can ignore it. Get down there. Let me know. Type Y for yes or N for no in the comment section of today's show. He also talked about, some of the new guys as well. He talked about Kelby Collins, reporters asking him where he was going to play along the defensive line for Alabama next season. Kane Wommack saying that he's going to play a little bit on the inside and at that bandit position, more on the outside, more that defensive end type of position there. So, we'll see how much. There's a lot of guys at that bandit position. We'll touch on here in a second, guys like Jordan Renaud, Keon, Keeley as well. You also have LT Overton at that bandit position. But a guy like Kelby Collins, in his time at Florida, his freshman season, he went crazy. He was a freshman all-SEC team, and then in his second season kind of went through a position change, kind of hindered that production a little bit for him. Now we'll see if this, is more of a position change for him, going to that bandit, but also playing more on the inside. We'll see what happens, but Kelby Collins, definitely a guy that Alabama is very excited about. And then LT Overton, we talk about him a lot, right? Kane Wommack was specifically asked about him being able to finish some of those sacks. I think it was Tony Tsoukalas that asked the question, said he was, just a fingernail away from maybe 4 or 5 more sacks last season. And Kane Wommack really stepped up and was like, hey, that honestly might be a coaching thing for me. Maybe he needs to do some more things in terms of, setting him up with some of those different run or pass keys that they see. He said it changes kind of the way those pass rushers or defensive linemen just in general, really the moves that they use, I guess, is kind of, how he explained it. Whether or not it's a pass play or a run play, some of those pre-snap things, maybe they can do a better job of coaching some of those guys up and, just being able to recognize some of those things as well. Because you see right there, man, he had 3 tackles for loss and 2 sacks. But, man, 39 pressures last season. If LT Overton can really, finish off some of those sacks going into next season, man, he's going to just absolutely fly up those draft boards going into next year's NFL draft. He was a guy this year, even I saw him in the top 50 of the Pro Football Focus big boards. LT Overton going into next season, very excited about what he's going to be able to do for the Crimson Tide. Just kind of looking at the grand scheme of things here along the defensive line, you got Jordan Renaud, Keon, Keeley that he mentioned as well. And I do want to say, he said Keon Keeley is doing some really good things right now. So hopefully he can find his way onto the football field. LT Overton also mentioned Keon Keeley in some of those side scrums, saying, out of his 3 years of playing college football, LT Overton started off at Texas A&M. So he saw a lot of good defensive linemen coming out of Texas A&M as well. And then now going into his second season at Alabama, he said he hasn't seen a guy like Keon Keeley just continue to grow and make some of those jumps year after year after year. So, remember, former 5-star guy right there in Keon Keeley. He was on our the transfer portal candidates list a couple months ago after the football season because he just hasn't been able to find his way onto the field. He also is a guy that went through a little bit of a position change as well. So hopefully going into, next season, Keon Keeley is a guy that can definitely contribute for Alabama. Before we continue here in just a second, I want to give a shout out to our friends over at Fanatics. You guys can get up to 50% off right now just by going to chatsports.com/CFB hoodies. They've got hoodies, they've got quarter zips, they've got crew necks, they've got everything that you can think of for Alabama football gear. So going into the next season, you guys can be fresh, you can get new stuff just by going to Fanatics. That link will be in the comment section and the description of today's video. You guys just got to go to chatsports.com/CFB hoodies. There'll also be a little clickable link over there in the corner of your screen. Kane Wommack was also asked about what are the points of emphasis during spring camp right now for the Crimson Tide's defense, and he mentioned 2 things here. create more negative plays next season and also create some more turnovers. Last year, Alabama started a little bit slow in that turnover category, but ended the season 5th in the country in takeaways, had 28 total takeaways last season, and according to Kane Wommack, that was not good enough. And I love that mentality as well from Kane Wommack, really just in general. I love him as a defensive coach and a defensive coordinator there. You had multiple games where you won games off of those turnovers as well. The Georgia game, the South Carolina game, you had Zabian Brown in that Georgia game. Pretty much in that game there, iced that game off with an interception. And, so going back to that game as well, he kind of got picked on a little bit. They were throwing that ball to the inside, and he was kind of going and trying to make a play, more of a back shoulder play, turn into that side. And they were beating him a little bit, and he was able to make those adjustments in game. And I think as a freshman, that is very impressive just to be able to do as well. And credit to the coaching staff as well for noticing some of those things. And then credit to Zabian Brown just to be able to actually implement that in game. I think that was a big thing. Very mature guy. Talk about a guy like Dijon as well. He had an interception at practice yesterday as well, another PBU. So these guys, man, they're really going to be ball hawks going into next season. Cannot wait. I think this defense just in general going into year 2, I think they're going to skyrocket, and hopefully to create more negative plays, going back to that LT Overton thing, hopefully this coaching staff can put them in more positions pre-snap to be able to succeed post-snap as well to create some of those negative plays. Make sure you guys are subscribed right now to the Alabama Football Report. Don't miss any Alabama football spring updates. Like I said, they're going on spring break coming up this week, but they will be back in action on the 18th. For practice number 4, and then they've got a few more practices, some scrimmages and everything like that, and then they'll have A-Day. We'll see what A-Day really looks like. It's not going to be televised this year. That kind of sucks, but it is what it is. So do not miss out. Make sure you guys hit that sub button for me right now. Kane Wommack also talked about Alabama's secondary, and he mentioned a lot of guys as well. He was asked specifically about guys like Dijon coming in. I think Tony Tsoukalos was another guy that asked the question there about whether or not he's going to be a safety or a corner for Alabama. Just because, you don't see a lot of corners out there that are 6'4", 197 pounds. Really, that body type a lot of the times more translates to that safety position. But Kane Wommack, in a really funny answer, just, came back at him and was like, no, right now, we really do see him more as a corner, for Alabama. But, the body types, they do change and everything like that. So maybe in the future things do change. But as of right now, he's just a long-ass corner. And I really do love that, kind of answer from Kane Wommack. Like I mentioned a minute ago, he had an interception during practice yesterday. Also had a nice pass breakup. But Kane Wommack also did mention that he got beat one time. So when it comes to those, freshmen, especially in that secondary, that's one of the hardest positions to play in football, just in general, I think, especially at that cornerback position. It's really going to tell, how he is able to bounce back from that and learn from some of those, mistakes and things like that. But he also did say he has the demeanor of a freshman that can come in and contribute immediately. So, like we said a couple days ago in our video, when it comes to the secondary, I do think it's going to be a position of strength for Alabama. And we did also mention Calhoun the other day as well. Kane Wommack really praising him as well. And he did say, some of these guys, when you're recruiting them, some of these guys out of Cincinnati, Ohio, they are more vocal. They really got that dog in them on the field. And he mentioned what I thought was pretty funny, considering, that corner, or really the secondary in general, is one of those positions where, guys talk a lot. They get in your face. They talk a lot of crap. And he said this secondary for Alabama doesn't really do that. They really keep their head down. And, they just try to go play after play after play. Calhoun, definitely a guy that's got that dog in him. Definitely a guy that, runs his mouth on the football field as well. And I think, a lot of times Alabama fans, they're like, oh, I don't want you to talk to the other team. And, I get that to an extent, but sometimes with some of these positions, especially at that cornerback position, having that dog in you, really getting under some of those, wide receiver skin, that does help out a lot. And this is definitely a guy, getting him in. He praised Utah's defense that he played in last year. He said it was a very hard place to just be able to get on the field in general, and him being able to go out there and really contribute for them. That was a positive thing. Getting him out of the transfer portal adds to Alabama's depth at that cornerback position, and I definitely do think this is going to be a guy that is going to play a lot of snaps for Alabama. How that's going to happen, we're just going to have to wait and see, but I do think this coaching staff does a very good job being able to use guys in different ways, because when it comes to recruiting and getting guys out of the transfer portal, they really do love some versatility. He was also asked about the Husky position as well. Some of the guys he mentioned. He didn't mention Red Morgan, but I do think going into next season, Red Morgan's going to be the starter there at that Husky position. But you do have guys like Dijon Jones as well at that Husky spot. He said he had been dealing with a little bit of a minor injury, so that set him back just a little bit, but I do think it sounded like things were coming along there for Dijon Jones, and he's going to be back, in plenty of time. He's not going to be out for the spring or anything like that, but just, working his way back up. It seemed like he was kind of getting a little bit of a slower start to spring practice here, but Dijon Jones, another guy that you got out of the transfer portal that I think, played a little bit for you last year, had some ups, had some downs, but just going into year 2, learning this system as well, I think he's going to be a guy that thrives in the future for Alabama. And then you also have Dre Kirkpatrick Jr., man. This is a kid that we were all really excited about because, we all remember watching Dre Kirkpatrick Sr. at Alabama some of those early years, in the Nick Saban regime there. He's entering his sophomore season this year. He's definitely a guy, he was a guy that Kane Wommack specifically mentioned that he was very excited about the progression that he's shown from year 1 to year 2. So, I don't necessarily think he's going to play a ton this year, but Dre Kirkpatrick, definitely a guy that you need to keep in the back of your heads, in the future here for the Crimson Tide. Now, if you guys made it to the end of the video, you are a real one, and we appreciate it here at the Alabama Football Report. If you guys are excited, make sure you guys hit that RTR in the comment section for me right now.